He was a young man, grown up in a bit of poverty, a simple fellow. He did not have a very good education. Being born in Canada in the would have been the mid 1800s. And so he really wasn't a candidate for the priesthood because he was not very good at school and so forth. But he wanted to give himself completely to God. He wanted to really belong fully to him. And so Andre, who was not very tall of stature either, who had gotten to a trade of cobbler, he was making some shoes, he went to a cobbler trade. He decided that he was going to be a Holy Cross brother, and he asked for admission to be a Holy Cross brother. And so the Holy Cross brothers ran a beautiful school there in Montreal, and so he was welcomed into the community, made his novitiate, and eventually he was assigned to be the porter. His job was to open the door and welcome people and get the priest who wanted to see, or the brothers or priests wanted to see them and so forth. That was his job. He was the doorkeeper. And he was a good doorkeeper, a very holy man who, as a lay brother, he was very devoted to St. Joseph. St. Joseph is the patron of the lay brother. So what is a lay brother, a religious brother? Is a brother who, a man who enters religious life, does not feel himself called to be a minister of the priesthood, but still consecrates himself to the Lord. And so he takes the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and lives in community life within the particular charism of that community. So he was a lay brother among the Holy Cross brothers. And he was very devoted to St. Joseph because St. Joseph is the patron of lay brothers. Because St. Joseph is their great example. He was working with his hands, the kind of menial jobs that a lot of the brothers normally did. And of course, St. Joseph's whole life was centered on Jesus and Our Lady. St. Joseph certainly lived in poverty. He lived in chastity with Our Lady, and he was completely obedient to the will of God. So he's kind of the patron of the lay brothers. So Blessed Andre, though, really intensified his devotion to St. Joseph and wanted to honor St. Joseph. And he would look out the door and he would see this mountain across from the school where he was the porter. And he kept thinking to himself, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a shrine there built to St. Joseph? And he asked his superior if they could buy the mountain and build a shrine to St. Joseph. And the superior said, already tried that, and we don't have the money for it. So Blessed Andre went over to the mountain. He would start making the way of the cross there during his little breaks. And he put a little statue of St. Joseph and prayed that St. Joseph would give them the mountain. Well, lo and behold, eventually he had the money to buy the mountain. And so the community bought the mountain. And so Blessed Andre put up a little statue, a little shrine to Joseph, and people would come and donate for a chapel to be built on the mountain. And lo and behold, quickly he had enough money for a little chapel to be built on the mountain, a beautiful statue of St. Joseph, and people began to go there regularly in honor of St. Joseph. Then people would come and ask for prayers for Blessed Andre, at the time Brother Andre. And so Brother Andre would take some oil from the lamps that were burning in front of the statue of St. Joseph, and he put his little finger in the oil, and he would make the sign of the cross of wherever their wounds would be, and pray that God would heal them. And they would be healed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, 30 a day, 40 a day. People coming to that little shrine to pray to St. Joseph, and all of a sudden, miracle after miracle after miracle is happening through the powerful intercession of St. Joseph. And people began to hold Brother Andre as this great saint. He says, no, it's not me, it's St. Joseph. He's the one doing the healing. Sometimes Blessed Andre would just look at someone and say, may St. Joseph heal you, and they were healed. St. Joseph working powerfully through this little lay brother. Well, people began to have these miracles and began to leave their crutches behind when they were healed, or they'd leave their walkers behind. Some people even left their prostheses because all of a sudden they had limbs they didn't have before. Sight restored, all kinds of miracles. And they just began to hang them up on the walls of this chapel, and soon that little chapel wasn't big enough. And so Blessed Andre was then given this beautiful understanding to build a true shrine to St. Joseph. And the money began to pour in, and he began to build a shrine, a true shrine to St. Joseph at the top of the mountain. When they were building it, they didn't have enough money to finish the dome. And Blessed Andre is in this meeting, and they're discussing the fact they can't afford to finish the great dome over the basilica that they were building. So Blessed Andre calmly left the meeting, took a small statue of St. Joseph, and went under where the altar would be, under the dome, and placed the statue of St. Joseph there. And they said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, if St. Joseph wants a roof, he's going to have to get himself a roof." When they returned the next day to the statue, they found an envelope full with just enough money to finish the dome. Blessed Andre built the largest shrine in the world to St. Joseph about 4 hours north of here in Montreal. It is kind of the crowning jewel of Montreal. When you drive up, you cannot miss St. Joseph's Oratory, this absolutely beautiful, beautiful shrine. The original chapel is still there, where Blessed Andre would continue to live in a little choir loft in a single room and come down and so forth. You have all these steps to get up to the shrine that they made, and you go on your knees and you pray to St. Joseph. You go up those steps in your knees, if you can, praying for particular intentions. And the first level of the shrine, there is a candle room, they call it. And there's different plaques to the different titles of St. Joseph, pictures of his life, and candles burning. And there are over 5,000 candles burning at any given time to St. Joseph in that lower chapel. You go around where there's a beautiful statue of St. Joseph, you go around, and there is the tomb of St. Andre. You go to the second floor, and they have a little museum to the life of St. Andre. And then you get to the very top, and the great basilica is there, which could hold thousands upon thousands of people. Blessed Andre's whole life was dedicated to promoting devotion to St. Joseph. So today, this year, is very special, and I'm sure it was his intercession from heaven that allowed Pope Francis to initiate this year as the year of St. Joseph. Because Blessed Andre, St. Andre, who's just canonized about 5 years ago, St. Andre wanted nothing more than to people to go to Joseph. He had a little adage he would always say in Latin, Ite Ad Ioseph, Ite Ad Ioseph, go to Joseph. Whenever he had a need, maybe had a struggle, a difficulty, he would simply say, go to Joseph. Because he knew that Joseph was the man closest to God, the man whom God himself called Father, the man who spent 30 years of his life with the Christ child, the man who taught God to work with his hands in a carpenter's shop, the man who would hold God in his own arms, the man who would sit by his bedside and watch over him at night, the man who would play with him on the floor, the man who would spend so much time. There was never someone more close, no man ever closer to Jesus than St. Joseph. And so Blessed Andre knew the powerful intercession of St. Joseph and promoted continuously throughout his whole life promotion of devotion to St. Joseph. Now, at the same time that Blessed Andre was up there in Montreal working his miracles, down in Detroit, there was a Franciscan by the name of Silas Casey, recently beatified, working miracles every day. And one day, Blessed Andre was making his journeys through the U.S. trying to raise money for the shrine and stopped to see Brother Solanus. And these two brothers got into a contest of who was going to say a prayer over who first. And Blessed Andre won because Solanus Casey was a priest and said, you're the priest, you bless me. I'm not blessing you, I'm just a brother. And so there's a picture in Detroit of Blessed Solanus Casey blessing St. Andre Bessette. And so a beautiful little meeting of the saints, these two wonderful holy men of North America, these contemporaries. After a very, very, very long life of so many things and so many miracles, hundreds, thousands of miracles, when you go there, and you go in particular the candle shrine, you'll see all the crutches, the walkers, the prostheses hanging up on the walls. I mean, thousands of them hanging on walls. And the brothers will tell you there that that's just some of what they have. They have a whole storehouse full of crutches and so forth that were left behind from people who were healed through the powerful intercession of St. Joseph. Every year I would bring my youth group up there to visit the shrine. Unfortunately, we have COVID, so we can't get across the border. We're lucky if we could make it to Vermont, being from Massachusetts. But if we could get through the border, it would be a wonderful pilgrimage to make this year to the shrine of St. Joseph. Blessed Andre lived into very old age and died in 1937. 1937 he passed. And 1 million people went to view his body and attend the funeral. 1 million people. Over his years of morning devotion, all those who have been healed came back to say thank you to the man who led them to Joseph who led them to Jesus, where they received the healing they sought. What a beautiful saint we celebrate today in Andre Bessette. This beautiful holy man, this beautiful lay brother, a simple man, not that educated. And you don't have to be a saint. One doesn't need great knowledge to be a saint. One needs great love. And Andre Bessette loved the Lord his God with his whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. And through the powerful intercession of his great patron, Saint Joseph, he led so many souls to the healing powers of God. May Saint Andre intercede for each of us today, that we may grow this year in our devotion to Saint Joseph, that Saint Joseph will continue to assist us in growing in love of Jesus, and that we each might reach that holiness that God wants for us. And in times of grave need, remember the words of Blessed Andre, Ite Ad Ioseph, go to Joseph. May God bless you, may Mary keep you, and may Joseph protect you. Amen.